is the courage to carry what must be carried without pretending it is light, but also without adding unnecessary weight through our own resistance. Marcus Aurelius called this amor fati, the love of fate. Not passive acceptance, not giving up, but a deep earned willingness to say, this is what my life contains, and I will meet it fully, with all that I am. What fear is really protecting? I want to pause here and say something that is rarely said in conversations about fear. Your fear is not your enemy. In most cases, your fear is trying to protect something you love. Think about the fears that visit you most often. The fear of failure is protecting your sense of worth. The fear of rejection is protecting your need for belonging. The fear of loss is protecting your love for someone or something. The fear of the unknown is protecting your need for safety and security. These are not shameful things to protect. These are the things that make us human. Epictetus understood this deeply. He said that the root of all emotional suffering is attachment, not attachment itself, but the belief that what we are attached to defines us. That if we lose it, we lose ourselves. And so the Stoic practice is not to stop loving. It is not to become cold or detached. It is to love fully and simultaneously to hold lightly. To say, I love this, I value this, and I know that it is not mine to keep forever. Nothing is, and that is not a tragedy. It is the nature of all beautiful things. This is one of the most mature, most difficult, and most liberating shifts a human mind can make. Because when you hold what you love with open hands, when you cherish it without clutching it, something remarkable happens. The fear softens, not because the possibility of loss goes away, but because you have made your peace with impermanence. And in that peace you are free to be fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. Marcus Aurelius returned to this again and again in his private journals. He would remind himself that his children, his empire, his body, his very breath, none of it was truly his. He was a temporary custodian of all of it. And from that place, not detachment but perspective, he could love it all more deeply, and fear losing it less. What fear is really protecting? I want to pause here and say something that is rarely said in conversations about fear. Your fear is not your enemy. In most cases, your fear is trying to protect something you love. Think about the fears that visit you most often. The fear of failure is protecting your sense of worth. The fear of rejection is protecting your need for belonging. The fear of loss is protecting your love for someone or something. The fear of the unknown is protecting your need for safety and security. These are not shameful things to protect. These are the things that make us human. Epictetus understood this deeply. He said that the root of all emotional suffering is attachment, not attachment itself, but the belief that what we are attached to defines us. That if we lose it, we lose ourselves. And so the Stoic practice is not to stop loving. It is not to become cold or detached. It is to love fully and simultaneously to hold lightly. To say, I love this, I value this, and I know that it is not mine to keep forever. Nothing is, and that is not a tragedy. It is the nature of all beautiful things. This is one of the most mature, most difficult, and most liberating shifts a human mind can make. Because when you hold what you love with open hands, when you cherish it without clutching it, something remarkable happens. The fear softens, not because the possibility of loss goes away, but because you have made your peace with impermanence. And in that peace you are free to be fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. Marcus Aurelius returned to this again and again in his private journals. He would remind himself that his children, his empire, his body, his very breath, none of it was truly his. He was a temporary custodian of all of it. And from that place, not detachment but perspective, he could love it all more deeply, and fear losing it less. A practical Stoic framework for facing fear. Before we close, I want to give you something you can carry with you. A simple, practical framework for the next time fear visits you, as it will. This is not a method for eliminating fear. This is a method for walking through it. Step 1, name it. When you feel fear, stop, take a breath, and say out loud if possible, I am afraid of, and complete it honestly. The Stoics believed that naming an emotion begins to reduce its power. What is vague and unnamed can overwhelm. What is named can be examined. Step 2, examine the story. Ask yourself, what am I assuming will happen? What is the worst case I am imagining? Write it down if you can. The act of writing forces precision, and precision is the enemy of catastrophizing. Then ask, how likely is this really? And if it did happen, could I survive it? Would my life still contain meaning? Step 3, practice premeditatio malorum. Sit with the feared outcome fully, honestly, for just 2 or 3 minutes. Imagine it clearly, feel the weight of it, and then ask yourself, what is still true even in this worst case? What do I still have? Who am I even then? This exercise, practiced regularly, builds a kind of inner resilience that no amount of positive thinking can produce. Step 4, take one small step toward what you fear. Not a grand gesture, not a dramatic confrontation, one small step. Make the call you've been avoiding. Begin the work that feels uncertain. Have the conversation you've been postponing. Because the Stoics understood that courage is not a feeling, it is a practice. And the first step, however small, begins the practice. Step 5, return to what is in your control. After you have faced the fear, return your attention to what you can actually influence. Not the outcome, you cannot fully control that. Not what others think or do, you cannot control that either. But your effort, your honesty, your choices in this moment, these are yours, completely and entirely yours, and they are, as the Stoics remind us, enough. We have traveled a long way together today, and I want to leave you with one final image to carry. Think of a flame. A single flame burning in a dark room. The darkness is vast. It surrounds the flame on every side. It is enormous and the flame is small. And yet the darkness cannot touch the flame. The darkness does not extinguish the flame. The flame simply burns, quietly, steadily, without urgency or fear of the dark around it. That is what the Stoics were pointing to, not the elimination of darkness, of uncertainty, of loss, of the unknown, but the cultivation of something inside you that the darkness cannot touch. A quality of mind, a steadiness of character, a willingness to be present in the face of what is uncertain and still choose to act with courage and care. Seneca wrote in one of his final letters, "It is not that I am brave because I do not fear. It is that I have learned what is truly worth fearing and found that most of it is not." Today, I invite you to carry that thought with you. The next time fear visits, and it will, pause before you flee. Ask what it is protecting. Look at what it is telling you. And then, gently, firmly, with all the quiet courage the Stoics spent their lives practicing, walk through it. Long pause, music swells gently, then fades. Thank you for being here today. The Stoic approach to fear, how to live courageously in an uncertain world. There is something that lives inside every human being. Something ancient, something powerful, something that has never in all of human history gone away. Fear. Not the fear of a single moment, the startled gasp, the racing heart, but something deeper, something quieter and more persistent. The fear that something bad is coming. The fear that you are not ready. The fear that the life you have built could at any moment be taken from you. This fear does not announce itself loudly. It whispers. It lives in the background of your thoughts, coloring your decisions, limiting your possibilities, shrinking the life you are willing to live. Welcome back. This is day 7 of our Stoic journey together, and today we turn toward one of the most honest and courageous teachings in all of Stoic philosophy. The art of living without being ruled by fear, not fearlessness. The Stoics were too wise for that, but something far more powerful. Freedom. Take a slow breath, settle in, and let's begin. The STOICS and the truth about fear. Let me begin with a confession that the Stoics made openly and that you rarely hear from anyone else. Fear is not weakness. In fact, the Stoics believed that the capacity to feel fear was a sign of a clear, honest mind. A mind that sees the world as it truly is, uncertain, impermanent, beyond our full control. The question they asked was not, how do I stop being afraid? The question was, what do I do with fear when it arrives? Because here is the truth that Stoic philosophy rests on. Fear, like all emotions, is not the problem. The problem is what you believe fear means. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Most of us, when we feel fear, believe it means something is about to go wrong. We treat fear as a prophecy, as evidence of coming disaster. But the Stoics saw it differently. Fear is information. It tells you that something matters to you, that you care about an outcome, that you are paying attention to the uncertainty of life. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. The error, the thing that robs you of your peace, is not the fear itself. It is the story you build around it. If this goes wrong, everything is ruined. If I fail, I am a failure. If I lose this, I have nothing. These stories, not the fear, but the stories, are what keep us paralyzed. And the Stoics, with extraordinary gentleness and precision, taught us exactly how to dismantle them. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, said something that has stayed with me ever since I first encountered it. He said, We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Read that slowly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think of the last time you feared something deeply. The difficult conversation you had to have. The outcome you were waiting on. The uncertainty you couldn't escape. How much of your suffering happened before the thing itself? How many hours or days or weeks did you spend living inside the fear, rehearsing worst cases, carrying a weight that did not yet exist? That is what the Stoics were pointing to. Not that bad things don't happen. They do. They happened to the Stoics themselves. Marcus Aurelius led his empire through plague and war. Epictetus was enslaved. Seneca was exiled and eventually forced to take his own life. These were not men speaking from comfort. They were men who had faced the worst the world could offer. And their teaching, refined through real suffering, was this: the fear of the thing is almost always worse than the thing itself. And even when the thing itself is hard, we are more capable of meeting it than we believe. Premeditatio, the Stoic practice of confronting fear. Now, I want to introduce you to one of the most unusual and most powerful practices in all of Stoicism. It is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. And when people first hear this, they often recoil. You want me to think about bad things? Isn't that just anxiety? Isn't that pessimism? No, it is the opposite. Let me explain. The Stoics observed something about human psychology that is as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. When we avoid thinking about what we fear, the fear grows. When we face it clearly, honestly, with the full light of our attention, its power over us diminishes. Here is what Seneca prescribed. Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. Premeditatio malorum is not about dwelling in darkness. It is about taking your fears out of the shadows, where they grow large and distorted, and placing them in the light, where you can see them clearly. The practice works like this. You think about what you fear losing: your health, your work, a relationship, your reputation, and you sit with the question: if this were taken from me, could I survive it? Could I still live with virtue? Would my life still have meaning? Almost always the answer is yes. And that answer, arrived at honestly through real contemplation, is one of the most liberating experiences a human being can have. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He would remind himself that the people he loved might not be with him forever, not to cause himself grief, but to cause himself gratitude. To ensure he did not take a single day for granted, he wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." This is not morbid. This is medicine. Because when you have truly sat with the possibility of loss, when you have looked it in the eye and not flinched, you discover something extraordinary. The fear loses its hold, not because the thing you fear can no longer happen, but because you have already faced it, already survived it in your imagination, already proven to yourself that you are capable of endurance. And from that place you are free to act, not recklessly, not without care, but freely, without the invisible weight of avoided fear pressing down on every decision. This is the courage the Stoics taught, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk through it. The three faces of Stoic courage. Courage in the Stoic tradition was one of the four cardinal virtues, alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance. But Stoic courage was not the courage of the battlefield alone. It was far more personal and far more demanding. When I study the writings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, I find that Stoic courage appears in three distinct forms. I want to share each of them with you. The first face, the courage to see clearly. Epictetus taught that most of our suffering begins not with what happens to us, but with how we see what happens to us. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions about things." This is perhaps the most important insight in all of Stoicism. Fear is not caused by the event. Fear is caused by the meaning we assign to the event. And so the first act of Stoic courage is this: the willingness to examine your own thinking. To ask, honestly, without defensiveness, is this thought true? Is my fear based on reality or on a story I am telling myself? This sounds simple. It is not. Because our minds are extraordinarily skilled at building convincing stories, especially stories about what could go wrong. The Stoic practice here is what Marcus Aurelius called hypotyposis, the practice of seeing things as they truly are, stripped of the drama and catastrophizing our minds add. Not this is the end of everything, but this is a difficult thing that I did not want. I will deal with it as best I can. The courage to see clearly is the foundation of everything else. The second face, the courage to act anyway. This is the courage most of us think of when we hear the word, the courage to speak when silence is easier, the courage to begin when the outcome is uncertain, the courage to pursue what matters when failure is possible. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." But he also said something harder. He taught that not acting, staying still out of fear, is itself a choice, and a costly one. Every time you let fear stop you from doing something that matters, you pay a price. Not just the price of the missed opportunity, but a subtler, deeper price. Each time you retreat from what you fear, you send a message to yourself. I am not capable of this. I am not strong enough. This is too much for me. And over time, that message becomes a belief, and that belief becomes a limit. The Stoics saw courage not as a dramatic single act, but as a daily practice of small forward movements in the face of uncertainty and discomfort. The courage to begin the difficult conversation. The courage to pursue the work that feels uncertain. The courage to be honest when flattery would be easier. These small acts of courage, accumulated over time, are what build a life you are genuinely proud of. The third face, the courage to endure. This is perhaps the form of courage the Stoics most admired, not the courage to charge forward, but the courage to hold still, to bear what must be borne, to endure what cannot be changed. Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that they are difficult." But he also wrote with equal force, "Endure, and set aside that part of your suffering which is purely unnecessary." The Stoics made a crucial distinction. There is suffering we create through our resistance to reality, through wishing things were different than they are, through raging at what cannot be changed. And there is suffering that is simply the weight of being human. Loss, illness, grief, uncertainty.